Lovely to be back. This is my last speaking engagement before I move to Sussex. So whilst we will all see each other again, it may not be for some time. So it's great to be here. And I said to Terry earlier, and I meant it, this is my favourite place to come. Of all the places that I'm invited to speak, honestly, this is my favourite place to come. There isn't anywhere quite like Grace Church, Shrewsbury. And you can read into that what you want. No, it's a wonderful place. So today's talk, it's a new talk, which is why I've got a lectern and notes, which is uncommon for me. But it is a new talk. And it's rather tantalizingly called Heaven is a Hopeless Place. Now, that's tantalizing, isn't it, Helen? Bit of a cliffhanger. I'm just starting my timer because otherwise I will run long. Great. So, does anyone have a birthday coming up? Over here. When's your birthday, sir? Tomorrow. And what are you hoping for? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What a gift. But of course, we have it at Christmas as well. When people say, "Oh, Christmas is coming," what are you hoping for? People's minds turn to presents and gifts. But if I slightly reword that question and I say, not what are you hoping for, what are you wishing for, but what are you longing for? The person I'm speaking to is no longer thinking about remote-controlled socks or kids on a bus. So we're talking about hope. And there's a massive difference between a birthday wish and Christian hope, between a Christmas wish and Christian hope. And because we're so lazy as a society with words. Words get clumped together and people assume they mean the same thing. But words do not mean the same thing. Happiness and joy, for instance, are not the same thing. Hoping and longing are not the same thing. And we want to really drill down into the meaning of the word hope and what we mean by Christian hope. Because everybody has longings, everybody has things that they are hoping for and longing for, those deep yearnings of the heart. And all of our human yearnings and longings are either to do with connection or justice. All of our deep longings have to do with connection or justice. I really want that person to come back. I really want that friendship to be restored. I really want that situation which has gone wrong to be put right. We can hope for kids on a bus to behave themselves. And, we're all praying for you. That's the main point of the prayer meeting at the Hotchkiss mansion later on. And we use the word hope, but that's not really what hope is. Hope is that deeper yearning and longing. And it's always to do with connection or justice. And the word hope is everywhere. We use it without thinking about it, but it has its roots in the deep magic of Christianity. The whole concept of hope has its roots in the deep magic of the Christian story. And Christian hope has much more to do with an expectant yearning than it has to do with wishing upon a star. Disney has corrupted lots of our words, and so here we are taking them back. Christian hope has to do with an expectant yearning and not wishing upon a star. Romans 8, Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 24. We do not hope for what we already have, which is a really interesting thing. And this is the main theme, that we do not hope for what we already have. Hope, and maybe we haven't thought about this. When I was writing this talk, I realized that I haven't given it a lot of thought prior to this. Hope is a pace setter for the human soul. If you think about a pace setter in a race, they're there just to set the pace, to go off ahead, to be out of reach, and then ultimately, when the time comes, to drop out of the race. Hope is the pace setter for the human soul. We do not hope for what we already have. When we have it, it stops being hope and it becomes something else. But hope should be, and is, always slightly out of reach. Which is why hope deferred can make the heart sick. Because it's always slightly out of reach. In that respect, hope is always prophetic. It points forward or upwards or beyond. Hope is always prophetic. It points about something yet to come. And again, if we think about that concept, we've got Rich down here who's growing a beard, looks absolutely gorgeous, doesn't he? What's your favourite food?
Favourite food?
Yeah.
Sausages.
Sausages, okay, bit just on their own, just a plate of sausages. Cut that bit. I don't know what editing software we've got. We'll cut that from the talk. We'll talk about my favourite food. So on my birthday, let's say that I'm going out for pizza, and maybe I have sausages on it, but at least there's something to go with the sausages. Let's say I'm going out for pizza, the best pizza, and I can't wait. And I've been looking forward to it for so long. I am so hungry. I am so ready for this pizza. I am expectant. I long for the pizza because I love it. When I get to the pizza restaurant and I have the pizza, I'm no longer hoping for it, am I? Because I've got it. I may be enjoying it, taking joy from it, and having pleasure from it. But at that point, I'm no longer expecting it. It's no longer prophetic because it is present. And this is what hope is. Hope, when we catch up with it, transforms into something else. It transforms into joy. And I'll come back to that later. But hope is always prophetic. And it has been wired into the universe. What's really interesting is that everyone in this room and everyone in this room knows, understands what I mean by human longing, understands what I mean by the concept of hope. Those things that we long for. It is wired into the human experience to hope for things. It's wired into the human experience to yearn and long and expect for those things that are not yet here. Christmas morning is another one. I don't know about you, but that sense of hope and expectancy I had waking up on Christmas morning was always a greater feeling than the experience and pleasure after I'd opened my present. If you like, Christmas Eve night when you go to bed, when you're small, I mean, most of us don't get excited about Christmas because we're the ones spending the money to give to Father Christmas who brings the presents. Just reading the room a bit. But Christmas Eve night is more magical than that bit, that short segment after you've opened your presents. Because the experience of hope is a wonderful and powerful driver. And you can survive for weeks without food. I've never tried it, I'm not planning to, but you can survive for weeks without food. You can survive for days without water. You can survive for minutes without air. You cannot survive without hope. You cannot live without hope. Air keeps the brain alive, but hope is the thing that keeps the soul alive. And you don't need hope because you might die today. You need hope because tomorrow you've got to wake up and live. You've got to wake up and navigate your life. You've got to live and not just exist. And hope is that thing that keeps us going. wired into the human heart prophetically. Hope is the beacon, the fiery beacon across the moor that keeps the lonely wayfarer travelling. Hope is the whisper in the ear of the paralyzed man that says, your sins are forgiven. Get up and walk. Hope is that prophetic voice, that point on the horizon that keeps us moving forward, even if we are struggling to move forward. And so what we're trying to do here is to understand what we mean by the word hope and to sort of shed it, some of its more crass connotations. Because words do change over time. So if I said I was an ambidexter, if I was ambidextrous, I'm not, but if I said if I was ambidextrous, Rich, you're still thinking about sausages, aren't you? What would I mean if I said I was ambidextrous? Yeah, I could use both hands. Now, that's not the original meaning with sausages. Yeah, 2 sausages, 1 in either hand, all right. What a weirdo. But that's not where the word ambidexter comes from. In the 16th century, an ambidexter was somebody who took bribes from both sides of a legal dispute. So they take a bribe with one hand and a bribe with the other hand. So if you went back to the 16th century and boasted that you were ambidexter, they wouldn't be impressed. They'd have you put in the stocks. So words change over time. So what I want to look at is what hope is, but first of all, what it isn't. What isn't Christian hope? Because lots of us mistake the two with terrible consequences. First of all, hope is not wishful thinking. Christian hope is not wishful thinking. Wishful thinking would be me saying, when my hair grows back, I hope it's long and curly like Poldark. That's wishful. You can say, and I might say, I hope that when it grows back. But that's not hope. It's wishful thinking. And it's inane and nonsensical. Hope is not wishful thinking. Christian hope is something that is unseen, but that we can be certain about. Hope is unseen, but we as Christians can be certain about what we do not see. Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is not positive thinking. This is the big confusion that people make. And probably we've all had job interviews where we felt it hasn't gone very well, and we've had a date that hasn't gone very well, and someone says to us, someone who's trying to be helpful will say, no, just think positively. Think positively. Don't talk like that. Think positively. Now, positive thinking is psychologically helpful because it's a guard against despair. But positive thinking does not change the outcome of what was going to happen. Positive thinking frames things for you in a way that is helpful for a bit. But when the negative news arrives that, yes, you didn't get the job because you turned up on horseback and in armour, and we're not looking to replace Terry anyway as head of Grace Church, so you certainly haven't got the job. Doesn't matter how positively I was thinking about that, it doesn't change it. So positive thinking is psychologically helpful, but it doesn't affect the outcome of what's coming. When the negative arrives, the positivity crumbles and you're left with despair. It's not wishful thinking. It's not positive thinking. This is another one. It's not the opposite. So hope is not the opposite of lament. Now, what do I mean by lament? Basically, lament is a sort of godly complaining at God, a godly ranting at God. Hope is not the opposite of that. The Psalms are full of lament, complaints at God. But that is not a hopeless situation. When you see people who are struggling and they're complaining and they're praying and they're wrestling, they are not hopeless because they are still talking to the person who might yet do something about their situation. When it comes to hopelessness, it's the quiet ones you've got to watch. Lament, shouting at God, screaming at God, crying at God is not a hopeless place to be. It's not the place we'd like to be, but it's a good place to be. Because you're talking to the person who may yet do something about it. And in that, of course, there is the hope that things may yet turn out well. So lament looks like despair from the outside, but it's not. It's hopeful. It holds hands with hope. Don't complain like this. Don't worry. Just be positive. No. Sometimes you need to shout at God. Sometimes you need to complain, because injustice is everywhere. And calling on the source of justice is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So lament is not the opposite of hope. And when you see people lamenting, you're seeing people who have not yet given up hope that justice might yet be done, that what was wrong may yet be put right. In the center of that, you have the hope that all things might yet be well. Christian hope can seem silly. In 1 Samuel, a book in the Old Testament, Hannah is praying for a child. And Eli comes along and basically makes fun of her because he thinks that she's drunk. So Hannah's not really in a position to be having a child. And Eli says, I think you need to take that drink away. So it looks silly. Hopefulness can look silly from the outside. But actually, in the case of Hannah, in the case of other people in the Bible, we see that actually it always has a positive dividend. So hope is not the belief, and this is a slight turn here, we're on to the next level here. And this is important. Hope is not the belief that any given situation will turn out well. Hope is not the belief that the situation you're currently in is going to end as you want it to end. Hope is not the belief that because you've talked to God about it and maybe you're a Christian, your desire in a particular situation will come to pass. That is not hope. That might be positive thinking. It might be bartering. It might be narcissism. But it's not what we call hope. We have specific situations. Now, what we're not saying is that if you've prayed about something, then there's not going to be any impact. Because we have situations, again, like Abraham, who's mentioned in Romans. It says in Romans about Abraham, against all hope, Abraham hoped. And I think the message says, Abraham just hoped anyway. Hope is a very positive thing, and I do think even when we hope for things that end up not happening, our hopefulness is credited to us as righteousness because it's in the right thing. If we put our hope, our yearning, our longing in the right thing, or more importantly, in the right person, then even when things don't go our way, I think we get a positive dividend from hoping in the first place, because it's better than despair, and it's better than a lot of other things as well. So there are situations where God does speak. If you're hopeful because God has said something to you, then you're right to hope for the positive outcome of that. If God has said, like for instance, I'm moving house, and 4 months ago I had no idea how I was going to afford it or where I was going to move, but I felt God say, don't worry, I'm going to find you the right house. So it wasn't senseless of me it was senseless then to worry. It wasn't senseless of me to be confident that even though I couldn't see what was coming, I knew God would provide. And he has, and I've got a not far too expensive, but I've got a nice house that I'm moving into. He's got me a job as well. I don't want a job. Anyway, this is not... I don't want a job. But God has provided, and I was right in that sense to be hopeful about it. But there are situations And this is where we fall down. There are situations where we put our hope in an outcome. And I've seen too many Christian friends either step away or fall away from the faith because they didn't get this distinction. I've seen Christians fall away from the faith or turn their back on the faith, even if it's only for a time, because they confused their prayers for something, their hopes about something, with the idea that God would automatically grant those things. So in our situations, what we need to do is, yes, have a desire for an outcome. But what we need to do is to put our hope not in a desired outcome, but in the nature and character of God. And they're similar things, aren't they? But our hope needs to be in Jesus, not in what Jesus might do for us, but in who Jesus is, regardless of what he might do for us. This is where we need to rest our hope. And it's this sort of hope that does not put us to shame. Positive thinking puts you to shame. Wishful thinking will put you to shame. Hope in an outcome rather than the nature and character of Jesus will put you to shame. But when we put our hope and trust and confidence in the nature of God and the character of God, then whatever happens, we will not lose hope. Because we also serve a God who, though he may not tick all of our boxes and answer all of our questions with a yes, loves a redemption story, loves to bless, knows the plans he has for you, and will bring them to completion. The Christian hope is not the mindless belief that your desires in a situation will come to pass, but it is the belief that there is a power in the universe that is working for your good. Christian hope is the belief there is a power, a personal power in the universe that is working for your good. And actually, if you think about it, there are lots of people, everybody I know has hope, and everybody I know sort of has this belief that things are meant to turn out well. You hear it from people who aren't Christians. Things happen for a reason. Well, what reason? Things work out for the best. You will hear almost everybody saying these things. Everybody believes that there is some sort of power in the universe that either is working or should be working for their good. But the thing is, a power isn't on your side. Powers can't be on your side. If you were on the beach paddling in the shallows and a tidal wave hit the beach, this wouldn't be in England, of course, but this is an analogy, and a tidal wave hit and missed you, you wouldn't thank the tidal wave. You wouldn't say, fortunately, the tidal wave was on my side. It would just be happenstance. Because powers are not personal. Only people are personal. Only a person can be on your side. So if you're someone who wouldn't call yourself a Christian, but you believe that things happen for a reason, that is a signpost. Let that be a signpost to the idea that there is a personal good in the universe that is for you. It is not your servant and is not your genie, but is for you and is working things out for your good. We need to put our hope in the right place and in the right person. Not in what God might do, but in who God is, regardless of what he might do. I have a personal experience of this. And I don't like to be too autobiographical in my preaching. I'd rather talk about Rich, as you know. But this is an example. So and some of you will know this, some of you won't. I talk about it in my very fine book, The Wayfarer, which you should have read by now. So eight years ago, Mrs. Kind decided that she didn't want to be Mrs. Kind anymore. So it's a long time ago. It's not fresh anymore. But it was a bit of a shock. And obviously my hope was for the marriage to be restored. And so I prayed and I prayed and I hoped and I hoped and I lamented and I lamented and I got other people to pray. And for 3 years I kept that up. And eventually I had to shift where my hope was. Because I don't know if you've hoped for something for so long and it's never happened. It is exhausting. It is painful and it is exhausting. And at the end of a 3-year period, I was emotionally exhausted and I was also spiritually paralyzed because I had been asking and praying for something that was good, that was right. I believe that God loves marriage and hates divorce, and I believe that my prayers were good ones and that God agreed with them. Unfortunately, God was working with some other people's wills and wishes, and he will not broach people's boundaries. So after 3 years of praying good prayers, the right prayers, I should have been praying for those things. It didn't make sense and it wasn't right. So I was praying the right things. But after 3 years, I had to shift. And I had to stop believing for a miracle while not losing faith in the God who does miracles. Again, these are next door neighbors, but they live very different lives. I had to stop believing for a specific miracle, even though I think all things being equal, God wanted that for me as well. I had to stop believing for a miracle, but I had to keep my faith in the God who does miracles. Does that make sense? This is what we mean by hope. God loves to bless. He loves to redeem. He loves a redemption story. He loves a happy ending. But not just at the end of our lives. He loves a happy ending in the small things as well. But for me, I had been exhausted putting my hope in a desired outcome. And when I started to shift it into the nature and character of God, knowing that whatever happened, he was with me, he was for me. He hadn't forgotten about me. He hadn't forgotten to bless. Then my strength started to come back. We put our hope in the God of miracles, even if in your situation you're not going to get a miracle this time. It doesn't mean that you've been forgotten. It doesn't mean that miracles aren't real. It doesn't mean that you are not loved. And if there is no God, of course, then hope is a cosmic prank. If we think about the fact that everybody has hope and yearnings and longings, if there is no God, then hope is a cosmic prank. Friedrich Nietzsche, a very famous atheist philosopher, said, "Hope is the greatest of all evils because it simply prolongs the torment of man." Without hope, we just accept that everything was rubbish and we were going to end in oblivion, and we just get on with it. What is it about the human spirit? What is it? It's almost as though we were made in the image of a God who has invested us and injected us with hope, whether we acknowledge him or not. If there is no God, then hope is just a trick. It's a trail of breadcrumbs to a gingerbread house where the witch is waiting to eat you. In any other worldview, hope is a trick. In any other worldview, your hopefulness, that thing that keeps you getting up in the morning, that belief that things might yet turn out well, it's tricking you. Because ultimately, you'll get to the end and it won't have turned out well. It will end in oblivion or annihilation. It won't end, if any other worldview is true, it won't end with hope being fulfilled. It won't end with hope telling you its real name, which is joy. So again, if you're here and you're not a Christian, I would just encourage you to think about why it is that you hope and what it is that you think you can get out of that. Where's that story ending for you? Because there is a story where it makes sense. So not everything we hope for happens. We're nearly done as well. Let me quickly tell you about friend of mine called Danny. So I used to work in Chesterfield as an evangelist. I used to work for a church, and I did the mission stuff, and we were running an Alpha course, and there was this guy, Danny, who came along. He was a tattoo artist, and he'd never really had any experience of Christianity. He came on this Alpha course, and we met in this pub in Chesterfield in the function room. And one night he was really overwhelmed by the story of the gospel, by the good news of Jesus, by this idea that, again, his hopes and longings might be pointing to something real. And so we prayed for him, and we prayed that the fire of God would land on him. It was, very sort of highbrow Christian stuff. And as we were praying that the fire of God would land on him, the fire alarm in the pub went off. And so we all had to gather. And we were obviously a bit full of ourselves, and like in the car park saying, well, that's because we prayed for the fire of God, isn't it? Yeah. That was us. I mean, it was a full pub, so we didn't really mean it. Anyway, we got called back in to we went back into the function room, and about a minute later, the landlady came and said, is everything okay in here? We said, yeah, everything's absolutely fine. Why? She said, well, I've just looked on the schematic. The fire was coming from your room. Now, that's an amazing story. I love it. So Danny had that experience and became a Christian as a result and got baptized. When I last saw him several years later, life had continued to be hard. Things hadn't gone well for him. Life had got broken again and fractured and fragmented. And I said, I'm sorry that this hasn't all ended up well. He said, no, but do you remember the fire of God in that pub? Like, yes. There are breadcrumbs in our life that point us to something beyond it. And I would encourage us to just reflect on those times where God has really acted, where maybe you have seen a miracle, where your prayers have been answered. I want to hear that the lads on the bus make no noise, and we will put that up on the screen, and that will be the best birthday present. And the girls too. Well, I didn't want to be sexist, that's all. This is why heaven is a hopeless place, because it's not needed. When you get to heaven, and what we're not saying is don't worry about what happens to you now, because you'll go to heaven one day. But what we are saying is whatever you're experiencing now, just you wait. Because what is to come is way better. And hope is, that hope in the human heart, is that guarantee that we are headed in the right direction. And there is a destination that's not oblivion, that's not annihilation. When we get to heaven, when you get to heaven, when you meet Jesus, you won't need hope, because at that point, the pace setter will have dropped out. The pace setter will have stopped, turned, walked towards you and told you its real name, which is joy. And then you won't need hope, because you'll already have joy, which is better by far. You'll have had your pizza and there was sausage on it and all you can eat. But we need hope now because life is hard. We need hope now because people are suffering. To different degrees and in different ways and at different times, people are suffering. And without hope, then suffering wins. And without Jesus, death wins. Because suffering works for death. Hope is that thing that keeps us going, whether we acknowledge Jesus or not. But let me just encourage you that hope only points to Jesus. Hope is a signpost planted gently right in the middle of your heart and soul that says, yes, this is a story worth following. This is the story that pulls us through. This is the rope that pulls us out of the mud. No other worldview has anything to say about suffering which is in any way satisfactory. And people will say, yeah, so I believe that Jesus is a symbol of hope. No. Hope is a symbol of Jesus. Your hope, whether you acknowledge it or not, is a symbol of Jesus, that you are made in the image of God. You are loved and known. And you were made for freedom You were made for joy. You were made for connection. Heaven is a hopeless place because we won't need it, because we'll have all the joy in the world. Jesus is not a symbol of hope. Hope is a symbol of Jesus. Amen.